call the meeting to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First order of business, item 1.03, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Thank you, Cindy, and a second from Sarah. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye. And no one's opposed or abstaining. Next, item 2.01, the presentation of our building action plans and strategic plan. Dr. Doughton.
Good evening. Happy Board Appreciation Week to all of you. I'm very happy to be here tonight to introduce our fantastic building principals, to talk to you about all of the work that they are doing to support our strategic plan. I'm going to just briefly cover a timeline, a little bit about the plan itself and our updates, and then I'll hand it over to the building principals. So historically, our planning process began back in the summer of 2021. That is when the first revision was proposed. From there, we began a revision of our strategic goals and then building level goals. And between our last two convocations in July of 22 and 23, we have continued a cycle of revision, new plans, and then board presentations, which is where we arrive tonight. Our district vision statement is there. Our goal is to make sure that whether you're a student in our archaeology camp, whether you are in our physical therapist program at one of our career tech programs at BOCES, whether you want to be somebody who's doing computer science with our coding club, or whether you have a passion for history, as you see here at our History Day presentation, that all of our students have the opportunity to pursue the things that inspire them and the opportunity to be as successful as they can be in those things. Our district's mission statement is about providing students with as many authentic learning experiences as we can to promote civic responsibility and to continue to innovate our programming. It's also about making sure that we create environments that recognize the strength of all of our students. So whether that's our student athletes with Special Olympics, whether that's our musicians, whether that's our students in dialogue clubs or those partaking in winter wellness activities, we want to make sure that we are adhering to the education of the whole student and taking care of them as people first and as students. We have 4 priority areas along with our goals, which we will present, which are teaching and learning, our school environment, service learning and community partnerships, and our fiscal capacity and responsibility. And so on these slides, you'll see that we have highlighted the updates to each of these areas. So we've continued to add and expand and innovate as the needs have arisen. But teaching and learning is really about making sure that we're innovative and that we're on the cutting edge of what we can offer our students. So we want to continue the tradition of academic success, but we also want to make sure that students are very self-directed in their learning, that they have a voice in their learning, and that their learning represents the skills that they need to succeed in the world beyond their K-12 education. And so the additions to teaching and learning are really to continue to develop a plan that will allow us to implement a lot of different personalized learning paths for students. And this is a real year of opportunity. I think opportunity is the word of the year, actually, for us to be able to do that. So giving students, giving faculty and staff, giving our community a chance to really respond to us about what that might look like, especially with the capital project that has happened in several of our buildings and is happening at the high school. What can learning look like? and there's a lot of opportunities around that. The other piece is to make sure that we're consistently using data to identify those areas of need so that we can support students wherever they're at to help them find personal success. And so data-driven conversations, whether that's benchmarking, whether that's our screeners, whether that's any type of assessment, we're going to use that to guide our conversations. The rest of the pieces are pieces that have been a part of our strategic plan since 2022. For school environment, safety and security is a right, and we want to make sure that students have the things that they need to be successful in their school environment. One of the pieces that's been put into place starting last spring and will continue throughout this year is conducting a needs assessment. So making sure that we are addressing all of the needs of our students, not just their academic, but also their mental health, social emotional needs, to make sure that we are creating not just welcoming but affirming environments that are responsive to the needs of students. Our students were surveyed last year, and they'll be surveyed again twice this year, as well as our faculty and staff this fall, and our families and communities in the spring. We've also formed a really robust DEI committee that is made up of administrators, faculty, staff, community members, parents, as well as experts in the field. And the DEI committee has worked to create subcommittees and has put together a series of really wonderful and robust recommendations for how we can continue to move forward as a district, making sure that we're responsive to all 4 areas of the culturally responsive sustaining education framework. So we continue to look forward to that transition. We've been focused very much on welcoming and affirming environments over the last 2 years, and we're now making the transition to inclusive curriculum and assessment, in addition to the 4 subcommittee recommendations from the DEI committee. For service learning and partnership, we got a wonderful experience with the Tri-State Consortium, and we had a fantastic district visit and review over this past spring. The essential questions were really around K-12 technology and its implementation, and how it can be used to further student learning, as well as create more equity within our populations. That report has been shared with our district curriculum council, with our technology committee. It's been shared with the board, and we'll be sharing it with teachers on November 7th for our staff day. We're also continuously seeking student service learning opportunities and trying to build more community partnerships to support the learning that's going on in our classroom. And we're always looking to innovate in that area as well. And then finally, fiscal capacity and responsibility, making sure that we are maintain a strong financial position so that we can continue to innovate and provide students with what they need when they need it. So from here, I am happy to hand the microphone over to our building leaders who will give you an idea of their building action plans, which every year are aligned to the strategic plan. And we're going to start with our 3 great elementary principals, Mr. Patrick McNamara of Mott Road, Dr. Debbie Capri of Enders Road, and Miss Eileen Lux of Fayetteville Elementary.
I thought the high school was going first, but here we are. Good evening. My name is Patrick McNamara, and I'm the principal at Mott Road Elementary School. I would like to introduce my colleagues, Dr. Deborah Capri, who is the principal at Enders Road, and Mrs. Eileen Lux, principal at Fayetteville Elementary. So the first district goal that I would like to discuss is professional learning for teachers in an environment of accelerated change. Specifically last year, K through 6 ELA frameworks were revised to align with best practices. This year, we are focusing on a resource needs assessment. So collectively, under the leadership of Dr. Doughton, our ELA resource teachers and K-6 teachers will take a comprehensive look at instruction and assessment to create the best possible reading and literacy program for our students. This process will continue as we spend time learning more about the science of reading at our next Professional Development Day. The next goal is identifying any learning loss or areas of learning loss that may have happened during the pandemic. Research shows that one of the best ways to help students regain learning loss or reach necessary standards is through win time, or what I need model. At Mott Road, our second grade teachers are using this model 3 times a week for 30 minutes to focus on literacy skills. Second graders are broken up into 5 homogeneous groups to receive specific instruction regarding necessary skills. At Enders Road last year, the second grade team researched win time, and this year they are piloting its implementation. The Enders pilot focuses specifically on literacy as well. Classroom teachers are collaborating with reading teachers, response to intervention teaching assistants, and ELA resource teachers to plan differentiated and fluid learning opportunities for students. At Fayetteville Elementary, kindergarten direct consult model sets up a win time during the ELA instructional block to make sure all students are getting what they need. The special education teacher and regular education teacher collaborate and plan stations. Thank you.
In addition to what Pat just shared, the 3 elementary buildings will be working closely with our teaching assistants to support our, thank you, a little shorter, our K-1 classrooms by providing targeted strategies. The goal of that is to increase students' phonological awareness using scientifically research-based reading programs like Road to the Code and Road to Reading. We will be providing training to support this endeavor. For the next goal, to expand opportunities that promote student engagement, educational equity, and personalization of instruction, all 3 elementary buildings have participated in a program that we call We All Learn Differently Olympics, and the acronym for WALDO. This was a program that was really developed over 25 years ago at Fayelle, and we have revamped the program. This past Friday, Enders Road 3rd grade students had the opportunity to partake in simulation activities. In addition, Mott Road is in the process of planning and organizing their event this year. At Fayelle, we're going to be offering this program to our 4th grade students in November. Our library media specialist is helping to prepare our 4th grade students for this immersion program by reading books to raise awareness. We've organized a panel to meet with our 4th grade students the day before the actual program. And the purpose of that panel is to give firsthand accounts of how successfully individuals participate in all aspects of life. For example, they will share with students adaptations that they've made with driving, as well as we have a professional soccer player that's in a wheelchair coming. So that panel will have that firsthand account. This past spring, we actually did meet with 2 FM graduates who are successfully employed as an engineer and a speech therapist. They are siblings, and they went through Fayelle. And they really provided us with their perspectives on how important it is to teach 9 and 10-year-olds about disability. Their sharing of their experience with disabilities, they really felt that we need to really focus on fostering inclusion, universal design, and advocacy. And this last part of advocacy may include like an action plan that our 4th graders will be able to partake as a group to come up with something. And one of the ideas is a playground project to make sure that that is a theme that includes all students, and every student would have the opportunity to be on a playground and find success in some aspect of that playground, like a quieter area. And we don't know what the students will come up with, but it's after their instruction that will be interesting to see what we end up deciding on, and really that topic of inclusion throughout our school culture. We feel very fortunate to be able to now collaborate with all 3 elementary buildings to share this experience, and then we can all foster and increase our community with worthwhile experiences for all of our students. So it's not just a Fayelle thing, it will be extended. So I'll turn it over to Debbie.
Great. Thank you so much, Eileen. And I'm probably even shorter, so I'm going to move it down a little bit more. The next priority area for the district is school environment that we are really focusing upon at the elementary level. And the first piece of that is that district goal of really looking at the development of the whole child in terms of social emotional learning, counseling, mental health. And there's many different ways that we do that, but one in particular is we did last year create at the elementary level an ad hoc social emotional learning committee that had representation across our counseling professionals as well as classroom teachers and administration. And last year they did some work where they created snapshots for each grade level that really outlined for families and for staff what are our target areas within our social emotional learning curriculum at each of our grade levels, kindergarten, first, second, third, and fourth. We thought that was important to really clarify that not only for our staff but for our families, so that they would know what their child is learning during the day in terms of that important curriculum, second step being the foundation of that curriculum that we are using. So that was the work last year that this committee did. Now in year 2, we are excited to really take a look at our report card. We have had a social and personal responsibility component to our report card, but it's time for it to be updated and to have it really be aligned with what we are doing within our social emotional learning curriculum. If a report card is meant to be a good communication tool for families, then it really is important that we make sure it's aligned with what those students are learning on a daily basis through second step. So that is the work that is to be done this year, with the hope that for next year's report card, we will be rolling that out and having that be a part of our elementary report card. We also are excited to collaborate with the county. We look forward to the addition of Promise Zone personnel as an additional professional to help support our counseling teams and allow us to provide even more differentiated mental health and social emotional learning support at the elementary level. And lastly, the BIMIS, which is the social emotional screening tool that we are using. We started last year administering that 2 times a year, and we look forward to this year expanding that to 3 times a year. And most importantly, look forward to how we can use that data to inform and guide the differentiated interventions we're offering to students. So we've already started to kind of dig into that data and really look at what are the strength areas and what are the growth areas, looking by building, by grade level or cohort, by classroom, and even by individual student. So we're really excited to have that standardized data to guide the different interventions that we can offer students through our counseling supports and the different resources that we have. And one last component of that is there is a progress monitoring component to BIMIS, which we piloted last year just a little bit, had a couple classroom teachers that were brave and willing to try it for one of their students, and we really found that it was a great tool that we're looking forward to expanding, so that if we use the BIMIS data to get an idea of what a growth area might be for a particular student, we can progress monitor as we're using an intervention, and then at the end of that intervention, take a look at what that data tells us. Did the child make the growth we wanted to see, or do we need to change the approach that we're using? So we're really excited to have data that's gonna just inform and guide the wonderful work our counseling team and teachers have already been doing. So that is the end of the elementary component of our presentation. I don't know if you have any questions. We're certainly happy to entertain those, and we just appreciate the time to be able to share the wonderful work that's happening at the elementary level.
Thank you all very much. I did have a question. I think it would be helpful if we took questions in between. So the data that that's being collected regarding the Promise Zone personnel and counseling, is that data from families, like parents and students, or what kind of data is being collected and who's it being collected from?
We haven't been fortunate enough yet to start with the Promise Zone personnel, so I know that the county is still going through the hiring process, trying to find a good fit for us. So at the moment, we don't have data to collect, but I think we anticipated once we had that professional, we could collect data to see how are they supporting our students, what interventions are they able to use to support our different students, and that we could gather data on the growth of those students with that extra support.
Thank you. Any other questions right now? Sarah?
I guess related to Marissa's question, so for the BIMAS, I know the teachers are administering it at the elementary level, and I know we had asked some questions at one point, wondering if there was ever a plan to extend to get data from family members related to the BIMAS, or is that not part of the plan at all?
I think at this point, no, I do know that is a part of the BIMAS. In discussing with other school districts that have been using it, I think they very much start with the kind of, at this level, with the educational or the educator input. It's certainly something as a district we can talk about to see, what is the value or what's a way that we can approach that. But right now, the plan was to first start with the teacher giving that input, but that's certainly something as a district we can take a look at.
One more just question on BIMAS. Does the monitoring tool give you a targeted intervention, or is that something that the school district the school tailors to what you're looking for? I just love any example you could give of what that might look like.
Sure, I can speak to, for last year, the few students we used, it didn't give a suggestion of a intervention, but you can very much target what kind of indicator or goal area you are progress monitoring. So, for a particular student, if there's one area that is a challenge or a growth, we can pick what the exact question or two that the teacher would complete for that progress monitoring. So no, the development of the intervention really comes from our counseling team. So looking at where is that child struggling, looking at the resources we have for interventions, and then just making sure that the progress monitoring goal is aligned with the intervention that we're giving to the child.
Thank you all very much. We appreciate it.
Great, thank you so much.
Good evening. We are pleased to provide an overview of Wildwood's and Eagle Hills Middle School 23-24 building goals as aligned with the school district's strategic plan tonight. We'd like to start with a thank you. Oopsie. I'm hitting buttons. Do I just hit back? This one? There we go. I'll try not to touch the computer and do that again. We'd like to start with a thank you to all of you, as this is School Board Recognition Week, and we're really grateful to all of you and your continuous support for us. That makes our school a positive and welcoming school community. So thank you. Both Mrs. McChrystal and myself look forward to your continued support with our building goals and strategies this year that we are about to present. As in past years, last year, Mrs. McChrystal and I worked closely with one another to ensure consistency between buildings with our goals and strategies, while at the same time, you'll note areas that are unique to each of our buildings as a result of the work from our building action teams and recognitions of each school's individual needs. At both Wellwood and Eagle Hill, our teachers are continuously refining, we'll start with teaching and learning, continuously refining the curriculum to ensure we are adhering to the newest standards, meeting the needs of all learners, and prioritizing district goals such as the focus on the CRSE framework and personalized learning. The middle schools are specifically focused on 2 areas of teaching and learning this year. The first being the continued integration of New York State Computer Science and Digital Fluency Learning Standards. This year, we will utilize the feedback from the Tri-State Consortium visit last spring to determine our next steps to enhance our instructional technology practices. This will tie in nice with our shift to computer-based testing this year. All students in grades 5 through 8 will take the New York State assessments on the computer this year. Over the summer, several teachers participated in curricular projects to prepare for the shift to computer-based testing. Additionally, a group of administrators and resource teachers recently participated in the regional computer-based testing training session through BOCES. Both middle schools field tested in accordance with our responsibility for New York State assessments in the computer-based model during the spring of 2023. That experience was enlightening for our technology leaders and classroom teachers. Following the lead of our professional learning team's plan for our November Professional Development Day, we will integrate the tri-state recommendations into collaborative department, faculty, and team meetings, along with further exploration of the educational advantages of the artificial intelligence, or AI, in teaching and learning. With our second goal, you may remember from last year, the middle schools adopted and implemented the STAR reading assessment to all students. This year, we have added the STAR math assessment. Students participated in these assessments utilizing their district-issued Chromebooks. The STAR reading and math assessments are universal screeners used to assess students' literacy and mathematical skills. It provides teachers additional data in which they can utilize in their instructional planning to personalize learning based on student need. This year, our teachers will continue to take part in ongoing training throughout the year to learn how to best utilize this data to inform their instruction and, again, personalize the learning for all of their students. Already this year, one of the trainings our reading teachers have participated in is learning how to utilize the progress monitoring component. This will allow our reading teachers who are providing intervention supports for our students the ability to set individualized goals for students and measure student progress over time. This data provides the middle school buildings a means to ensure educational equity and access to the curriculum for all of our students.
Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to continue the overview of our middle school building plans. Further, I am delighted to partner with Mrs. Tricia Fogarty as my co-leader, my exceptional co-leader in teaching and learning. As reflected in each building's plan, our goal, strategy, and outcome indicators encompass multiple years, continuing to focus on school environment. In providing social emotional learning, counseling, and mental health services to support the development of the whole child, we continue to refine multiple and diverse supports for our students. With our collaborative leadership enhanced by Mr. William DeSantis, our mental health educator, Wellwood and Eagle Hill Middle Schools will again administer the Behavioral Intervention Monitoring Assessment System, or the BIMAS, as a measure of our students' behavioral functioning, social skills, and emotional skills, along with the Student Climate Survey with the analytical and statistical support of Research and Marketing Strategies, or RMS, twice this year. Our first experience with both measures last year provided a foundation for dialogues with students and families by our counseling staff to support student skill development, and dialogue with our instructional staff to make improvements to address unmet student needs. The School Climate Survey measured students' perceptions related to engagement or social connectedness, safety, including emotional safety, physical safety, bullying, and substance abuse, and environmental considerations including our physical space, instruction, mental health, and discipline. With time for our teachers to reflect on the students' responses in August, the majority of our middle school students feel that there are many opportunities for students to get involved in sports, clubs, and other activities outside of class. Students shared that people with different cultural backgrounds, races, and ethnicities get along well in school. Students believe our staff members and other students are inclusive and care about them. Our students love their teachers and feel teachers care about their well-being outside of the classroom. Students resounded that teachers are available when a student needs to talk, and students have opportunities to be involved in class discussions and activities. Additionally, our students share that they feel substantial stress around their own expectations of academic success. Students would like to have input in the development of enrichment activities, and there are times where students feel that other students are both disrespectful and exhibit rude behavior. With this data, we will continue to build our systems of tiered support for students, including individual sessions, group sessions, and classroom lessons by our school counselors, school psychologists, and family school liaisons. Further, both middle schools look forward to the future implementation of on-campus mental health clinics provided through Arise and a shared student assistance counselor provided by Contact Community Services. Both middle schools are exploring restorative justice practices as refining relationship strategies between pairs and groups of students. Last week, Eagle Hill's 6th grade students participated in the practice led by our mental health educator, our assistant principal, our administrative intern, and me to explore the individual and collective impact of graffiti found in a shared space. Students' advocacy, care, compassion, and voice were exemplified in our school environment, including one student remarking, "We are better than this." At Wellwood, the experience has included dialogue between students who violated the code of conduct and those most closely impacted by that violation. Apologies and whole class discussions have been the product of those specific dialogues to rebuild relationships following harm. In advancing a district-wide welcoming and affirming environment that values and respects all individuals by continuing to refine the integration of the culturally responsive sustaining education, or CRSE framework, we will continue to expand learning opportunities that support inquiry, collaboration, and choice. As we enter our 3rd year with attention to how individuals are welcomed and affirmed in our school environment, we seek students' contributions to enhance our community through students' individual expression. You may have seen, as our family saw during recent curriculum nights, our teamwork collages on Eagle Hill classroom doors representing students' choice, perspectives, and voice in their homerooms. Both middle schools continue to utilize school-wide recognitions of important civic characteristics, including teamwork and integrity to date. Further, our enrichment period opportunities continue to reflect students' leadership in creating a pickleball club and cubing club, along with our staff members' leadership in offering American Sign Language Club, Kindness Club, the Meaningful Mentors Club, Movement Club, and Modern Band. Specifically in Modern Band, students may unleash their inner rock star while learning to play in a modern rock band style through guitar, bass, and drums, while singing and maybe even composing a song. Prior experience on modern band instruments is a bonus, but not required. As the success of our middle schools is grounded in our elementary schools, after Mrs. Fogarty and I answer any of your questions, I am honored to introduce the next step as reflected by the high school building plan and our high school administrative colleagues.
Any questions for our middle school leaders?
So I do just have one. And tonight might not be the time to delve deeper, but I'd love to understand more about what you're doing in exploring restorative justice practices, number one. And then number two is my question that I should also have asked the elementary school teachers, or principals rather, but specifically on this of what can we as a board do to help with that if needed? Because obviously we have code of conduct and policies, and as this evolves in the project that you're doing with that, it would be great if you could update us on things that you may need from us to assist with that.
Certainly, and I always appreciate your support. At both middle schools, we have tapped the leadership of those who have had training in restorative justice practices and also have supported the participation of both of our assistant principals in recent restorative justice professional learning outside the district. We have leaned on Will DeSantis as well, and Will's current work in his own fellowship and his experience in collaborating with schools in the Tri-County area. And we are a work in progress as we hope to model for our students that when harm is done, it's important to create the stage where that's not repeated, but also to recognize how that made everyone feel and how do we repair that relationship. As we need things, we will certainly keep you informed.
So my question was related to the welcoming and affirming environment, and I'm just curious, after last year having the hate speech at Eagle Hill, and then there was a program designed, and I know it was rolled out at Eagle Hill, and I believe it was intended to be a sort of traveling program that was going to be ongoing. So I was curious how that fits into the goals at the building and how that's going to be incorporated as a lesson learned and moving forward.
And the theme of last year's half-day with students in January was the power of words, and we referenced that quite a bit, and that was the product of our incredible leadership of teachers in the building under the direction of our assistant principal, Mrs. Beth Smith. And I will let Trish speak to how it's unfolded in a slightly different way at Wellwood because of not having quite the demand that I felt existed here at Eagle Hill last January.
I'm drawing a blank on the organization we brought in. Generation, no, they came and presented. I'm drawing a blank on the name of the organization that came in, 3 Generations,
Yes.
3G,
3G.
3GNY. Forgive me, because I'm drawing a blank on that, but the organization did come in and present at Eagle Hill, and we did bring them in later in the year at Wellwood. Certainly, Wellwood wasn't responding to some of the things that Eagle Hill was. On our half day, we actually had a wonderful cultural celebration. So we felt, although our activities were not aligned specifically, we were addressing it in a different way. We weren't responding to something, but we were taking a more proactive approach at Wellwood, as in a group of students in our Agents of Change class wanted to celebrate and acknowledge the many different cultures and how diverse our building is. And so that turned into a cultural day at our school, which was really organized by the students in recruiting people to come in from community. It was students, community members, parents, and it turned out to be a really wonderful day that they shared, that we all shared as a building, and we hope to make that a not every year event, but every other year, something that we continue at Wellwood, because the kids really enjoyed it.
Do you guys partner with Interfaith Works like they do at the elementary level as well? Have they come and given education?
We do. We can answer in stereo.
I know.
So our 8th grade students have the opportunity for the inter-school exchange with schools in Syracuse City, and we also piloted last year the intra-school conversations led by our teacher leaders activities during enrichment period. We also have incredible support in our community. One gentleman is represented here tonight, Mr. Haim Jaffe. Given the circumstances last year at Eagle Hill, the unbelievable support and outreach from our community cannot be underestimated. And I am so incredibly grateful for community members and families being very interested in supporting whatever we needed. So thank you for setting that example for the entire community.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Got our high school team?
Let's see here. Well, good evening. I'm about to present on my 6.5 weeks of experience in FM high school. So if you'll indulge me a little bit, I think that actually is a benefit because when I came here 6 weeks ago, I was an outsider, and I feel as though I'm slowly but surely becoming an insider. And I think it's important that I have that paradigm, and I can share a little bit of that insight. So the level of specificity that my colleagues may have, I may not have, but I think it's important that I share what I have. And then I do have Heidi Green, our director of counseling, here with me to address some of the issues that are really, I think you need a level of specificity on. So without any further ado, I would probably say that the word of the day at FM High School is change. There's change in leadership, there's change in the building, the physical footprint of the building because of the capital project, and there's impending change with the recommendations from the Blue Ribbon Commission. My presence here tonight, I'm hoping, is symbolic of that change, and I hope that the community and the teachers and the board and the students see that as good. I've spent the past 6 weeks endeavoring to transform from an outsider to an insider. I've been able to watch and listen, and I can tell you that the building is in good hands. And it's not because of me. It's because of the caring adults. Everyone working in that building, I have found, works for the benefit of the students. FM High School is filled with invested, caring professionals. I'm an observer tonight, and I hope to be a mirror of that culture through the review of our action plans. So as I said, my level of specificity may not be as deep as everyone else's. So as I went through this, I was looking at things that I picked up on and can comment on. So as we look at this in communication, paramount to the success of the students is the partnership between the school, the student, and the family. Two-way communication is crucial. Now, I believe that the foundation of that communication is growth-producing, trusting relationship between the teachers and the students. In my very short time here, I can tell you that is what I'm most impressed with. According to the student climate survey, 83% of the students either agree or strongly agree that the statement, "my teacher cares about me," is true. Teachers show that through their words and their actions, and that they truly care about the kids. And I must be very candid with you, they've had to model perseverance and resilience in the face of adversity. They are outstanding role models. With that said, we are constantly looking to improve the homeschool communication. In today's digital age, we have so many opportunities to communicate. It's critical to communicate in multiple ways today. If you have a teenager or you have a preteen, you know they communicate one way. And there are young adult parents who communicate one way. And then there are people of my generation who don't know how to use their phones yet, who communicate another way. So we feel that it's important that we communicate in multiple modalities. And while the best communication between home and school is face-to-face, or at least a phone call, it's not always feasible. Therefore, we do rely on our platforms such as Google's Gmail, School Tool, Schoology, Parent Square, and Score. All of these serve a purpose of helping us to better communicate with our students at home. I think if I were to give you where we stand with it now, I would say that we're all learning to maximize those platforms right now. They all do something different. We're still learning how to use it in the most efficient and effective manners. As I got up to speed, I have found, as I get up to speed, I should say, I've found existing structures that talk about these potential changes at the high school. Whether it's through my frequent conversations with Dr. Kilmer, the administrative team, instructional forum, or building committee, the structures do exist for these conversations to take place. Admittedly, these conversations need to be picked up where they left off. Having survived a large capital project, I can tell you that the new footprint of the building is going to change the way that kids flow through that building. And as we move forward, we're going to have to take a slow, methodical approach to scheduling while the construction is underway, as we really don't want to implement something only to have to scrap it immediately when the building comes online. We are going to continue, this year we will continue these conversations to be ready when the time comes. As a recommendation of the climate survey, the high school faculty has begun the process of looking at data to make meaning. The process started on opening day and will continue. Once again, I believe that the foundation for creating a welcoming and affirming environment exists through those strong, positive student-teacher relationships. However, this is enhanced by the opportunities to engage in school activities that these same teachers are advising. A particular highlight of that student climate survey is that 94% of our students said that there are lots of chances for students at this high school to get involved, whether it's sports, clubs, or other activities outside of class. You know, we have over 80 clubs in that high school. We have over 80 opportunities in interscholastics. We have the most robust music program in Onondaga County. There are just multiple examples of how we can create these opportunities for kids so that they can work together and learn to be as one, as a fact or as a stat or as a student body. But I want to give you a couple of examples of this commitment to creating a welcoming and affirming environment And I offer this as anecdotal to you. The extracurricular fair that we held was one of the most impressive things that I ever have seen in my life. And I'm going to tell you, over 80 stands with kids, every kid going through to see what kind of opportunities existed for them. I would tell you that that alone is outstanding, but the best thing I saw was a young man standing against the door, not participating, not walking around, and I watched one of our counselors walk up to him, talk to him, and then brought him in. I thought that was one of the most important things that I could see, because obviously here's somebody who may be a little bit shy and doesn't want to engage, and to have that dynamic adult in their life to help them engage, I thought was just one of the most outstanding things I'd ever seen. I have to tell you, I had my first FM pep rally, 1,300 kids in a room screaming and cheering for each other. It was absolutely one of the most outstanding events I've ever been to in my life. As a high school principal of over 20 years, you kind of get a lump in your throat when you put all the kids in one room together. It was absolutely fantastic. I think other things I would tell you is that the large attendance, we had over 800 kids attend our homecoming dance. And what, again, taking it a little bit deeper, watching our special needs kids included in that was one of the best things I've ever seen. They were involved and included in all the dances, but the teachers there supporting them too, I thought was absolutely outstanding. I think also the fact that we have an office, the SAO, just dedicated to these activities for kids to make sure that they run and to make sure that they have an avenue, if they have an idea, to bring that forward is a very unique and compelling thing to have in this district. Now, granted, all this doesn't guarantee affirmation and acceptance, but again, this does lay a great foundation. There's more work that needs to be done, there's no doubt. There are a lot of questions that need to be asked before recommendations can be made and policy and procedure drafted. All right. Teaching and learning in the school environment. The policy received, this policy received an applause at open house. We have piloted a new cell phone policy, and I believe it's one of the strongest ones I've seen. In speaking with my colleagues around Onondaga County, the reason I call this strong is because this isn't a prohibition, it's an acceptable use. We're trying to teach these young adults how to properly use a very, very powerful machine that's in their hands. And it seems to be working. The teachers have, through a survey at our first faculty meeting that I had, told me that they're finding that the kids are more engaged in learning because they're not worried about their phones. They are telling us that it's not the problem that it could be, because kids are respectful of that rule. So I am telling you, this cell phone, I actually have shared this with all my colleagues around Onondaga County, because I think that it could be something that other school districts could use. And if you talk to the kids, they'll tell you, at the very least, they don't mind it. And some say they even like it. And one of the other things I would add here is, when I really dug into the meat of that climate survey, and there was a comment in one of the anecdotal things that said, sometimes kids aren't nice to each other. I think we all realize that cell phones are the main mode of communication. And when we back them up and start teaching them appropriate use, we're also teaching them the right way to use it too. So I thought that was, again, I have no evidence to prove that, but that's, 34 years as a public educator, I'm feeling like we're on the right track. At this time, I'd like to invite Heidi Green up to join me. She can talk a lot more about this stuff, and again, with a little bit more specificity. Heidi?
Thanks, John. No, you're doing a great job. It makes me so excited to be at the high school when you hear all these great things. 800 kids at a dance out of 1,400 students is tremendous. But I'm going to talk a little bit about our environment and mental health updates, and repeat a little bit of what you heard today. I'm going to talk a little bit about last year's accomplishments. A lot happened between the time I talked last year and this year, and so we've got some really great things. As was mentioned, Will DeSantis, our mental health educator, brought a number of initiatives to focus on health and wellness of our students at the high school and around the district. We became better prepared in supporting the mental health of our students and staff based on his leadership,
experience, and expertise. So some student activities that were done last year will continue to be done this year. We did things like P.S. I Love You in February and No One Sits Alone Day. Students wore purple in support of the importance of mental health and to decrease bullying. Chalk the Walk, we just did actually at many of the buildings in the district recently. It's at a high level, a suicide prevention activity, but a lot of positive messaging. So whether you're in kindergarten or a senior in high school, sending positive messages to your peers. Last year, we had several mental health workshops for students throughout the year, both utilizing outside speakers and internal presenters. Every student, as was mentioned earlier, participated in the BIMAS, a measure of social, emotional, behavioral functioning. At the high school, it was a self-report that they did, and we will continue to do that this fall. Professional development and parent programming, each building completed 4 sessions of crisis team training. The district office staff was also included so that as a district, we share common language when it comes to crisis response. Will provided suicide safety in schools to our support staff around the district and in the high school, and also to some teaching staff. And we had 3 consecutive weeks in December of parent programming. Every Monday night, we did sort of a different topic for parent programming, and we did that all virtually. We recognize that some folks may or may not be as comfortable coming out for some of the various topics that might be considered personal, and so we were able to do that virtually. We had a resources fair in the fall with many agencies holding a tabling event, and following the tabling event, all the presenters were able to go in classrooms, and so parents and community members could go and listen to a particular topic of interest they might have on a particular mental health topic. And our partnership with CNY Mental Health Counseling with Dr. Melissa Carmen has been an invaluable resource to our families, to our staff, and to me personally or professionally. She is remarkable, and we are really fortunate that we have that partnership with Dr. Carmen and her agency. So this year, as my colleagues have alluded to, we've recently completed the BIMAS in the elementary and middle schools and are going to continue to do that in November and December at the high school. During our senior seminars this year, which is really a launching point for students to higher education and life beyond FM, we transitioned one of our 6 workshops and we focused on mental health and life after FM. And we had 4 social workers and Will in the auditorium, and students went through 4 different stations and learned about sort of how to take care of themselves after high school, resources once they graduate from FM, how to seek help as an adult. So we're really trying to launch them into responsible and resourceful adults when it comes to their own health and wellness. In partnership with Dr. Carmen and her practice, we're in the early planning stages of showing a movie called Each and Every Day, which is produced by the JED Foundation, and it takes a look at mental health through the eyes of youth. And we believe it's important to bring more of these initiatives during the school day because we find that when we do an evening event, our attendance is not always optimal. And so we are working with our staff to find days and times that we can educate our entire student body through that process. We'll host our Wellness Day in January as always, and we plan to build in other wellness moments throughout the year, teaching students about topics such as vaping, screen time, about the importance of sleep, and other healthy habits. And we continue to incorporate our daily wellness break, allowing our students 20 minutes of downtime in the middle of the academic day. We've welcomed a new family school liaison and a new student assistance counselor from Contact Community Services. They are both social workers, and they have both hit the ground running. They are very busy and are just both wonderful, wonderful professionals. They've been a great addition to our staff, and we're also looking, like the middle schools, to the addition of a practitioner in our building once our mental health clinic is ready to roll. So no mental health presentation would be complete without our therapy dog program, which continues to grow. We have 16 dogs in the district. These are our high school dogs, and I'm almost getting to the point that I can't name them all anymore. I can name the high school ones, but top center looking at the camera with his blue tag is my dog Milo, and I brought Milo in. I bring him on Mondays. We call it Milo Mondays. And last year, you know, sometimes people say, well, what data is there about dogs? Well, I've got to tell you, last week, not last year, a student came running up to me in the foyer and plopped down with Milo and said, this is why I came to school today, and just sat on the floor with the dog. And so, although it may be hard to measure, certainly the dogs are having an impact. In fact, we call them staff members. And as I came over here, I remembered I have Milo's ID, but the reason I bring it is because his is modeled after a student ID, and on the back of the student ID, we have a lot of support services. And I may have mentioned this last year, but the crisis text line, suicide prevention line, Crisis Connects, which is a 24/7 line, the Trevor helpline for LGBTQ plus students. And if you need help in any way, 911 or 988, and at the bottom we say, you matter, and that's really our message. So I'm gonna turn it back to John, but not before you get a chance to see our middle school staff and our elementary staff. And now John, try to beat that.
Oh, it's horrible. I can't beat that. Last but not least, the goal we have here, you can see, is our school environment. Or I'm sorry, as we're talking about physical capacity and responsibility. I was lucky enough to spend a lot of time here transitioning with Dr. Kilmer and his very detailed plan for the capital project. I'm busy getting as much information as I can, and I'm amazed at the phasing plan and the minimal disruption to the students that we have in place right now. I will continue that as the overpass comes down this spring, and that obviously is going to cause issues with flow, and we're gonna have to talk about what our viable options are, as well as how do we keep our kids safe in those viable options. Though that is a work in progress as we speak. Finally, I end with thank you for all you do. This is a very important role, being a board member, and in honor of that, Jensen Bergman and the technology kids made you your little awards there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and we really, these are beautiful. The amount of time and talent that went into creating these for each board member, we really appreciate that. So thank you to the students and who put the work into putting these together for the board. They change colors and they're really cool. Everybody really likes them. So thank you. Questions for our high school team? How about Cindy?
I don't really have questions, just more of commendations, directed kind of at Heidi. The dogs are huge. I think they have been one of the best things that have been added to the district. When you watch kids, often kids who are not necessarily cued into school, watching them go and greet the dogs, it's sometimes, you're exactly right, the reason they come to school, and they provide wonderful things. So kudos to all of you, because it's hard to bring them in, and it adds to your days as well. And the other comment, the senior seminars, adding a mental health component so that kids can think about post-high school, I think is fabulous, because it makes it a wonderful thing for them to understand. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who presented tonight. The presentations were really well done and greatly, greatly appreciated. So thank you all. I guess, John, and I'm going to rely more on Heidi and actually Dr. Tice to help fill in the blanks here. So in the presentation, we talk about, once again, looking at moving school start times. And we know we've done the research on it, but we're, I guess, because we do have a timeline on the presentation that says by 2024, we're going to come to conclusion on that. So what is the current thinking about, A, are we doing it? And then B, if we are, what school year do we think, how far away are we from doing it? So 2 parts.
I'll try to answer that as best I can. I mean, we have the construction project, which is the linchpin, as you know, in terms of trying to pull off the switch of the activity period at the end of the day into the middle of the day. That being said, we want to be able to plan ahead and work backwards from that giving the community as much time as possible to plan ahead. Part of it will go into our next presentation in terms of the buses, because we're gonna have to make a decision based on the fleet. And the e-bus part is only gonna throw another variable in. And are we looking at triple tripping like we're doing right now, or double tripping? So that'll be a big factor in it. So we wanna start with the construction project, work backwards, and then make an announcement as soon as possible.
So it's definitely not next year. Can we
It's
say that?
definitely not, yes, not next year.
Okay.
We'll try to give a year out in advance as best possible.
Thank you.
Good question.
So Heidi, with all of the new resources that we've added over the last year with mental health, one of the things we've talked about is making sure the students know all of the different supports that are available to them. Do you think, I think it's great on the back of the ID card that you guys have added all that information, but do you think that the students are becoming more familiar with all the different kinds of supports that we have available for them, or do we still need to do some work to make sure that they are aware of everything that's here?
There we go. I think we can always do more work. I think at the beginning of the year, Dr. Kilmer at the opening day assemblies for every class introduced our 2 new social workers, and every student was present in those presentations. So that was a starting point, certainly the first day of the year. And Link Crew, some of the Link Crew leaders talked about, you know, when they would walk by our counseling center and talk about the resources that were available. We can always do more. We're working on re-upping our mental health brochure from last year to include our newest resources that are available to us. But I can tell you, based on trying to make appointments to see our 2 social workers, I have a difficult time finding them available and not meeting with students. They are both filled all day long, every day. So they've certainly been found for those who need the support immediately.
And then by word of mouth, it will spread, so it won't be a student who doesn't know. I just wanted to say welcome to you, Mr. Durkee. I've heard nothing but wonderful things about you, so keep up the good work.
Thanks.
And we're so lucky to have you available.
Retirement was overrated, don't worry.
So I just first want to start with thank yous to everybody that was here tonight. This is honestly one of the nights that I most look forward to each year, because we talk about a lot of things in our meetings, but we also always recognize that the real work gets done in the buildings. And so really having a clear understanding of so much of that is always so helpful and wonderful. I have one very specific piece that was on one of your slides that I do have a question for, and Heidi, I guess I'll ask you because John's got 6.5 weeks here. One of the strategies that was listed was collect data on homework teacher, student, parent perspectives, and to revise the high school homework philosophy statement. So I'm curious as to the methodology of collecting first, and then the timeline of the objective.
That is a good question. That is a work in progress. That's why it's on this year's plan, is something that we're going to be working with together with our admin team, with our teachers, with instructional forums. So we don't have a specific tool or procedure yet that we're going to incorporate, but it's something that we're going to investigate. We did a little bit. We did a homework survey with kids during the pandemic. We did some research and asked them about the time that they were spending, because we were getting mixed amounts of information from students. That was also when we had that Wednesday remote day, and so we were concerned based on some of the feedback that we were getting from students and families, and so we went out with a survey, and there's a range, it's a bell curve, so some students and families think they have too much, some think they don't have enough, and most sort of fall in the middle. So we don't have a tool specified yet to do that research, but that's something that we're going to enact this year, probably with the support of our instructional forum, our educational leaders in the building.
Is that, I just want to make sure I understand the timeline though, is the timeline expected that this revised philosophy statement will be this academic year, or is it an extended, just context, same meeting last year, we talked about that there was a teacher committee that was put together to study homework with recommendations, hopefully by the end of the year. Some additional things came up that delayed that. I'm just trying to figure out where we are chronologically.
Yeah, we probably have to go look in the files in the principal's office and pull that folder and take a look at it because, right, I wasn't involved with that initial conversation, and so we are in transition for sure, and we'll look at that and maybe have an update for you in the near future.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to stop talking about it. Let's talk, just because I'm here. So I can tell you that.
Okay, thank you all very much. We really appreciate outstanding presentations all around. Thank you very much. Okay. Next item on the agenda, item 2.02, presentation, invitation to the electric bus town hall event. Mr. Corbin? They're all.
Excited, I thought I had all this help. Yes, how's everybody? Good. I thought what I'd do, it was just really make it very brief. We're gonna cover this on Wednesday. We have 2 sessions. The morning session will be really for local districts. I think we're gonna probably have anywhere from 20 to 26 districts probably represented at that. There'll be a head mechanics meeting. There's been invitations out for my role, for Dr. Tice's role. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw board members and other superintendents, maybe even other districts as well. So it would be something that's heavily populated from that aspect. And then the evening session, as you know, is really more based on an FM perspective and invite those invites out to the community, et cetera. So the topics that are going to be covered, requirements and timing, that really hasn't changed. 2027 and 2035 for the end date. Bus options and pricings, we've got some updated information there in regards to actual pricing from a large bus as well as a smaller or a 30-passenger bus. Other needs, things we have there from grid perspective, charging stations, and probably the biggest one being the parking, so the actual facility itself, that'll be something we'll have to talk about and figure that out, but that'll also be another thing we'll discuss. Another item, grants and funding. There's a couple different options that are out there. One of them, again, really hasn't changed much as far as wealth-based, and we've already talked about that a little bit, where we really aren't going to be probably too fortunate there, but there are some other ones that are out there, and Jeremy will be, from New York Bus Sales, will be presenting with me, and he'll be talking about a little bit of those opportunities. We also do have our we have our fleet study results. We've got that back. That'll be gone over. We'll review it a little bit there. My plan is subsequently after that, we'll have facilities committee meeting on Thursday, and then give or take, kind of what's everything going on from the high school to this. We'll have a discussion further, and then at that next board meeting on November 6th, I'd like to get together and then maybe present kind of what came out of that meeting as well as the results from that fleet study, and have any questions or anything like that answered. So that was the plan. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
Invitation to go out to people who've expressed an interest in this before, have come and spoken to the board. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think everything's out on, was it Live Talk or? Let's Talk. I think we've only had one person so far, and they were looking forward to it. So, so far, it's pretty optimistic that we can have a good conversation. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Brad. Oops.
10. Yep.
Moving on. So was there another question for Brad? Oh, good. Item 2.03, President's Report. I did want to acknowledge two items that we're receiving a lot of correspondence in reference to. We've had some board discussion, board, I'll say discussion in regards to. The first one is the swimming pool issue. So I did want to, from this table, because this is where our official statements come in regards to any action, any facilities action, anything that we would be taking. So I wanted to say it from this table that the board is aware of the situation in regards to our swimming team. We are aware of the community's interest in discussing the issue of a swimming pool, and that is something that we are going to be responding to in terms of the community's questions. I am working on a response on behalf of the board. It's a little more in-depth than I had thought, because just when I think I'm done, there's a question I don't know the answer to, and I need to get more information so that we, as a board, as a district, can provide the best source of information to our community. I've seen some misinformation out in the community, and I just want to remind board members in the community that the superintendent and the board president speak on behalf of the board. So when you're speaking to board members in the public, they're speaking to you as parents, they're speaking to you as community members, they're not speaking on behalf of the board. So if you have questions, please send them in to the Board of Education, to the superintendent, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. The information that I'm going to gather for the parents who have written in so far, and thank you very much to those parents, I will ask that the superintendent get that information out on our social media, on our website, and other ways, and certainly to all the members of the parents and the swim team, so that they have all the information in response to their questions. So if there are parents who have not written to us yet and have questions, specific questions, I know there are two gentlemen here, I believe, tonight, who are going to address the board in public comment, and perhaps there'll be some questions I can write down during their public comment that I can respond to as well. But I just wanted to address that from this seat, because an issue like this has the ability to bring a community together, and it can also create division. So we need to make sure that we get that information out, the best information out, and that the public understands the channel to get their questions answered, so that they have accurate information. So that's what I wanted to say on that one. Did anybody else have any follow-up to that, or any thoughts on that issue? Daryl or Dan?
I just had the question that was raised earlier in the week is obviously a communication that would come out, Marissa, from you as opposed to Dr. Tice, is a communication that's on behalf of the entire board. And so the request that was made was for us to be able to at least see that. And I was confused by the response, because response was, well, that's only if there's disagreement on it, but if we don't see it, we don't know if it's accurate or if there is disagreement on it. So I would just ask that we have the opportunity to see that before that goes out, if that is to be conveyed on all of our behalf.
Sure. My plan is to get it, have legal looked at, Dr. Tice, Mr. Corbin, and the board. So it wasn't so much as disagreement and specifically on the issues that were presented, is that normally I respond to all the correspondence from the district, and usually I don't run it by for additional wordsmithing, but on an issue like this, where I do want everyone to have their name attached to it, so the community does understand that we are speaking with one voice, because it has been said in the community that people are talking to individual board members, and I want people to understand that it is the board speaking as a whole. So I definitely get that out to the board so that all of our names go on there, and that people have that understanding. So I'll definitely take care of that. Additional comments or questions? Sarah, you want to say something, but not quite sure? So if there are board member questions about the process as well, because we do have, I don't think no one was on this board the last time this was, well, it's been looked at, and I think through facilities and other means, but not like looked at as a big community project. So if there are board members who have questions as well, then by all means send those in so that we can include that. My goal is not to just have a response that is just for the questions were in those two emails, because there's been a lot of questions that I've been seeing in the community. I heard some questions this evening with our local, state, and town officials. So if there are board member questions, those are probably things that other people in the community are thinking of as well. So by all means, send those in too, so we can have like a frequently asked question, or all those questions that we can combine and sort and get out to the public.
I mean, I guess my overall question for all of us is, so we have committed to a program for student athletes here, and at what point are we going to either identify a long-term viable option that either means, identifying a partnership with another facility, or actually do the cost benefit and actually look at the figures to developing our own facility, or saying, you know what, we shouldn't have a program at FM because that's not a viable option, and look for another choice. I'm just wondering what the next steps are in terms of evaluating what the can come next for these guys.
I think it's something for the board to discuss. I mean, we have our building condition survey that's due in March, and we've used that to set our facilities priorities. So that's certainly something that we can have in that discussion, look at what other things that we need to consider. So I don't have a time frame on that, but I think once we get the building condition survey and we see what our architects are telling us are priorities, then I think that might be the time in March for us to really have that discussion as far as like what our next steps might be. Or what other thoughts do other people have? Rebecca?
My thought to tack on is the building condition survey will not assess the cost of a pool. So I'm just wondering if we'd also want to have that data when we consider everything together. Because right now we'd be just shooting in the dark on that issue.
So the building condition survey doesn't tell that. It just looks at where our current facilities are. I mean, we do have other information about what we can and cannot do as far as facilities at the high school now, based on our current projects. So are you asking for a budget or like just a general overview of what it would cost?
I think that would be helpful information as we, there's a groundswell of support among certain, a constituency or a community for a pool. I think it would be helpful as we consider the overall budget for facilities going forward.
And that is something we can have the architects take a look at, again, even regionally on what other districts are doing. Yep.
I do think this is something that can also be addressed through facilities as we continue our long-term planning so that we look at it more in depth. We're not going to wait. It doesn't make sense logically to wait until the completion of the BCS, which won't, as has been said, won't address that at all. But I think these are things that we can continue to evaluate. But I think it's very important that we very diligently evaluate two things, and Sarah alluded to both of them. One is, what are the options with partnerships with other facilities that can be locked down now, so that we know there is either a future available or there isn't a future available. Because putting our student athletes through what they've gone through, not just this fall, but let's be clear, they've been swimming outside since 2020 in snow, sleet, and rain. And, enough is enough on that. We owe it to them while we're evaluating the feasibility or non-feasibility, as the case may be, of a facility here, of making sure that we are actually doing right by them in securing commitments at other locations. And so it's really a very specifically two-pronged thing that we need to be doing and not waiting on for next year to figure out next year. Next year needs to be figured out like today.
So just one point on that, in terms of like long-term partnerships. So one of the things that happened this year was, and you're right, this wasn't acceptable for what our students were have had to do. But the partnership with Nottingham High School is something that Dr. Tice was able to bring about within a very short period of time to make sure that there is something in place for our students, and that is an option for our students. So I did want to point that out because the pictures are very graphic and unnerving, quite frankly. But I didn't want the public to get the impression through any comments or anything that that's what the board and the district chose for our students. It wasn't the best option for them to be swimming outdoors, but it wasn't that we picked a pool that was polluted or of those in those circumstances. And so Dr. Tice was able to work out an agreement with Syracuse City School District for us to use the Nottingham pool. Moving forward, we have, again, if there are any other questions or ideas from the board that we can put into this information that we get out from the community, any questions, if you all could get those to me. I'm assuming people have had some time to think about this. If there are additional ones that you could get to me, by Wednesday, so we can really finalize this communication and get it out, that would be very helpful. Jason, I think your finger's on the trigger.
So I think, Marissa, in that communication that goes out on Wednesday, right? So the ask I'm going to have is that we communicate whatever it is we're doing. Because even if we snapped our fingers tonight and had the money and wanted to build a pool, we're at least 3 to 5 years away, right? I mean, at a minimum. So we owe it to the community to at least say what we're investigating and what we're doing for the next 3 to 5 years. Again, to go through the proper chains and doing the studies and whatnot. You know, we owe it to them to at least say what we're investigating and give them, if we can, at least a high-level timeline of when we think we have an answer for the next 3 to 5 years.
Did you mean, I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure we're communicating facts and not facts as we wish them to be. So, you know, Marissa, when you just said that this was not what our district chose or planned for our student athletes, swimming outdoors for this fall season was what this district chose for our girls' swim team this fall.
Dan, what I was referring to was the condition of the pool, because online, there was a post that showed the pool, and there was a post that said, this is what our district chose. And what I'm saying is, no, it was not the best option for the kids to be swimming outside. But no one went over and looked at a pool like that and said, yes, this is the pool we want our kids to be swimming in. That's the clarification that I was trying to make on that point.
And that's where I just want to make sure we're specific and factual.
Okay, so
because
I just want to be, I'll be very specific.
Because
then.
they have been swimming in that pool since 2020. That has been their primary practice facility. We were also swimming at Cazenovia College. It was limited hours after the pandemic. They have been outside in the snow, sleet, and rain for many, many, many practices since that period of time. And I appreciate that calls were finally made very recently to get them into Nottingham, and grateful for the Syracuse City School District for allowing that. But the reality is that's for 2 weeks. This swim team starts tapering, for those who understand swimming, in 2 weeks. So this gives them 2 weeks of practice when they have had an incredibly challenging, interrupted, unfair to them season. Whether it was algae or not, they're still outdoors in a pool, and we can do better for all of our student athletes than that as an alternative. And that was not something that came as a surprise this fall.
Right, two separate issues, the outdoor pool and the condition of the pool. So we can look at long-term options, but I want to clarify your question, Jason. You said looking out 3 to 5 years, like plan. Were you talking about facilities in general, or were you talking about?
No, I'm
this
talking about the
particular
plan
issue?
for the swim team, right? So while we're looking at the pool issue, discussion, right? We know that even if all of us voted yes tonight and somebody dropped an $18 million check in our hand to build a pool facility, it'd still take us 3 to 5 years, right? So I think we need to look at it with that lens. Facility committee will go through and do the due diligence and, potentially look at the town and talk about all the different options that might have available to us. But I think we owe it to the swim program, right? And especially for kids now that are at the modified level, right? To say, this is what what we hope to provide, be able to provide or not be able to provide over the next, 3 to 5 years while we're figuring out, the issue of the pool, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I guess one question I have is, and I think it's important to clarify, did it take photos of an algae-infested pool to get us to even have this conversation about evaluating what a real cost proposal would look like, and seeing, how much we spend on rentals vis-a-vis all the different things that could be outlined? So I think we owe it also for transparency purposes. Was this even on our radar of something that we were going to look critically at? And if it wasn't, maybe we need to just evaluate why that is, and when we look at all the programs that we offer in the district, just to make sure that we're looking at it with an equity lens as well, that we're looking at everything that we're offering, which we offer a lot, but that we're doing so in a comprehensive way.
Thank you, that's a very good point. I have here history, looking at the facilities process. So far, how this has come up before, because there has been, not very recent, but there has been some discussion in regards to this. I don't know how in-depth that went, so we need to get that. And I also would like, to your point, to understand what that process has been in terms of planning for equity across our teams and looking at the needs of each team. So I agree, that's definitely something that we should look at, because why did it come to where we are right now? So, yeah, I agree. If there are any questions, and again, I'll start on this draft, I'll get it out to everybody on Wednesday. But I really would like to get it out to the public as soon as possible. So if you have any additional questions, as soon as you can get them to me, the better. The sooner you can get them to me, the better.
So I just want to add one thing while we're talking about our student athletes. For anybody who has not yet seen, there is a video that has been circulating online since last week of our JV football team that I would love to have recognized by this district, and the hugest of kudos to the coaches and the athletes when we talk about equity and inclusion of our special needs students. It was pretty special. So huge kudos to everybody from FM and Beeville who was involved in that.
Thank you. I have not heard about this or seen it. Is it something the district put together, or was it put together by a family? And where can we see it or get hold of it?
It was parent videos. The coaches obviously from FM were obviously involved in this. It's a wonderful thing that should be shared much more widely.
Well, thank you for bringing it to our attention. I certainly would love to see that, and perhaps that's something that we can share on is it on the Hornet website, our Instagram at all? Has it been posted there anywhere? It's just like on someone's page? Well, if you know the person, then you can reach out to them and have them contact Dr. Tice or Scott to see if we can get that out to the public. That would be great. Thank you. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, so earlier this week, or over the weekend, see, I've lost track of time. It's that point in the semester where I've just lost track of time. We sent out, from the district, or Dr. Tice sent out a letter to our community in regards to the crisis that is happening right now in Israel, and to offer support to families and students and staff in our community who may be impacted by what's happening. During our DEI community meeting, there was an opportunity for a moment of silence and some sharing in regards to that. And I was thinking about moving forward, because this is not going to be, unfortunately, the last time that there is a situation like this in the world that impacts our community. And we have a lot of emotional support resources in our community. We have public relations people, but I feel like we're not quite at a district where we do this. I don't want to say do it well, doesn't sound quite right when you talk about these types of tragedies, but I was wondering if we could have perhaps the community relations, some discussion about how we respond to crises as a district. We have our DEI work that we're doing, but I just want to make sure that we are being, that people are aware consistently. And Heidi spoke about this earlier, that the students, the efforts being made to make sure students are aware, but even broader, our community is aware of the resources. And not only that, just the support that we have on an ongoing basis for all members of our community. Because I don't want it to be like when there's a crisis, we are really trying to work on messaging and getting things out to people. I want us to have that backbone or that foundation of we have been putting these types of support information out to people consistently, so that when something happens, it's doesn't feel as reactionary. I was having a conversation with Sarah about this, and with all the work that we're doing with DEI, I feel like it should blend into this. It should lead this work, so that when there is a crisis in the world or locally or whatever, we have that to stand on. We have that to show. We've shown people. We don't have to wait until, or it doesn't have to feel like we've waited until something's happened to really do a community outreach effort to any particular segment of our community. So I just wanted to, put that thought out there. Maybe it's something more of community relations could talk about, or maybe other people have thoughts on, how we've responded, what we could do better. Just,
I guess
Jason?
the thing this week that just kind of caught me by surprise is I guess we do have the equivalent of one full-time FTE in community relations, right? And/or public response, I thought, right? So I guess that's the thing that was a little troubling to me, is that we've, in these situations, we have a tendency to have a very delayed response. And I just feel like if we have a full-time FTE looking at this, again, I agree that they need to partner with the DEI committee and community relations and whatnot, but I would hope that that person or that position could drive kind of our response and do it in a little bit more timely fashion than what the district did this past week.
That's a good conversation to have as far as how do we use that particular individual. We use CAP Region BOCES, but we're also part of OCM BOCES. So there are opportunities to coordinate with other districts to put out stronger responses. But again, I don't know exactly how best to do that. So I think it might be a good time to have that conversation about how we're using that resource. Dr. Tice?
Yeah, but the spokespeople for the district are yours truly and the board president. So that person would never issue anything without my consent. In fact, when I came out of my sickbed to come in on Friday, when there was a lot of chatter, their advice to me was not to put anything out. So.
That's a whole different conversation that I don't want to put out right now.
Yeah. So I overrode them to put something out.
So there's a lot of things I could say, but I think what I'd like to focus on is, I think we are really working on messaging for mental health and the resources. This particular situation, just like other situations, is very unique. Every situation's unique. And if you look at what NICED put out on their website, they start off saying children and adults can be deeply affected by image and knowledges of war. And given Hamas's attacks on Israeli citizens, many in our school communities will be deeply impacted by these events through family connections or through looking at social media. We know that the atrocities are being broadcast on social media. And so given all of that, I think saying something versus being silent is the way to go, and addressing, as you did, pointing to resources, and that's what NICED did. So I think it's using the guidance of what else is out there in the community that are thought leaders on this. NICED is one, there's many others, there's religious leaders, there's different cultural groups, but I think the guidance of educational organizations leading the way is helpful. But I hear you, Marissa, but I think there's specific instances at play here that are really dangerous to our kids. And we need to be okay making statements. We need to be okay not always getting it right. But I think the more we communicate, the better.
So Rebecca, I wasn't saying that we shouldn't have said anything. I just want to make sure how we can do it better. Like anytime something happens, we need to reevaluate and see what we can do better. And there's certainly room for us doing better in this circumstance and better going forward. So I wasn't saying that we shouldn't have said anything. I just want to reflect back and see what we could have done better, how we could do this better in the future, because it does seem like sometimes we are a little reactionary and not ready to go, and there's always going to be a unique situation, unfortunately. So we're not going to have like everything ready to go. And we definitely shouldn't have a boilerplate letter where we just, change events or times, but I feel like we could be a little more prepared, and have some discussion about how to be more prepared so we can support people better. I didn't mean to imply that we shouldn't have said anything.
Oh, no, I had heard you say, let's make sure that we're proactive in communicating mental health resources, and I do think we are. I think there's tailored messages, and I completely agree with you. We need to be prepared to be out front. And if we're not, if we, to the point of if we don't want to make a statement, let's just have the conversation or, understand what, because I know that, as you said, as we've talked about as a board, there's times you can't comment on every world event, and we're not trying to get into politics. At the same time, we need to think about what's affecting our kids and our community.
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to add is, I think it's really knowing our community here at FM, and making sure that we're being aware as much as possible. Obviously, there's so many nuances, and we're a very diverse community, but we also need to recognize and keep our students' safety and their well-being at the forefront of any communication that we're doing. So thinking about how our kids might be impacted in all different ways and getting that feedback maybe from the teachers who are working directly with the kids and what they're seeing in conversations, as well as community leaders that we know are also directly impacted by a particular thing. They can give us, and I know they would be willing to give us a lot of good advice and counsel, and give us a different perspective, because it's always hard when you are a member of one particular, you identify in one area, and that's sort of the work of DEI, right? It's how do you make sure you're also putting on the lens of somebody who associates with a different particular area, whether it's culturally, religiously, ethnically, whatever. And how do we make sure that we're, centering that perspective whenever we're giving any sort of communication?
I just have a very logistical question. Dr. Tice, obviously you were out most of last week, and I didn't know that until well into the week. When you're out now, it used to be like when you go to a conference, you'd tell us in advance, I'm leaving for a conference, this is the person who's in charge. Who's in charge in your absence?
Because I was home ill, the calls were still coming in, so I was still working from home, so to speak, while I was ill. So I was still in charge. I just chose on Friday, it was easier to crawl out of bed and come into work than to stay at home. In the past, it was Mr. Gordon was the deputy superintendent. Right now, since his retirement, Dr. Coughlin filled in, but now it's a brand new group. So I know that's something we've talked about as a board before.
So
I am always available, even if I'm at NISCUS. Sarah can always get a hold of me by text, by phone, by email. I'm never off duty, 24/7.
Well, that's very generous of you, Dr. Tice, but I think, so is there a plan to develop to identify who your backup is, so that, because obviously you can't plan for an emergency or something, so we should.
We've started that conversation as a governance team. We haven't brought it to closure, is my understanding. I don't know if you were at that meeting when we started the conversation.
Well, we're going to have it again in executive session today, so I think. So we can bring it up again during executive session to catch everybody up. Surprise. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that conversation, everyone. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda, item 2.04, superintendent's report. Dr. Tice, why you still have some steam left?
Well, I still have some voice. I'll be quick. They're short reports. For the first one, superintendent report, capital project update. The high school capital project reached new heights, pun intended, with the arrival of the crane to install the structural steel for the new STEM technology edition. It was very interesting to see the new STEM space begin to take shape. You already talked about item 2, the varsity girls swim team moved to Nottingham High School due to the poor water quality and biomatter within the local outdoor pool. The team has been able to move to Nottingham. We've worked out the details. Thank you to Mr. Corbin and the business office. And so we will have the use of Nottingham through state championships. And then last but not least, the electric bus town hall meeting, as Mr. Corbin alluded to, will be this Wednesday, 6 p.m. in the district bus garage and transportation center. Representatives from New York Bus Sales and district officials will be on hand to discuss some of the pertinent information about Governor Hochul's directive to have an electric fleet by the year 2035. Prototype buses will also be on display at the event as well. That ends my first report.
Thank you. Questions for Dr. Tice?
Yep, so Craig, so I'm not trying to pick on you. I'm really not. But later tonight, you're asking us to approve stipends for a boys' winter swim team. Do we know where the boys' winter swim team is going to be?
Lemoyne College pool. No picking on me at all.
Does the modified program have a home?
I'm assuming it's a Y, but I'll have to.
Can we, the answer was he didn't know.
I didn't know about modified. I'm assuming it's at the Y, but I'd have to ask that question.
As part of the information that we're putting out to the community, can we get from our athletic director, like what the plans are for each team, where they're swimming at, and what the, like, the length of those particular contracts are, so we have that information? I think that would be helpful as far as.
I know our
information
athletic
that we put out.
director has been looking at longer-term solutions, which I think is what Mr. Seidberg's point was earlier. Those conversations have already started to take place for the out years. I know even the current year, and you might be able to tell me differently, I even think there was a toss-up of traveling for an indoor facility this fall versus staying local and rolling the dice on the outdoor facility.
What was the indoor option? You said there was an option for it?
Indoor option further away.
Where, do you,
I don't know, but that's what I was told. So the idea was, it was a decision made to stay local for all the reasons of putting a team on a bus.
so they weighed the distance to travel to the site
That's my
versus?
understanding, yeah, it was
Okay.
self-inflicted.
Well, just because you're looking at me asking a question, my recollection, and I would let Mr. Sugar speak to this more specifically, was I believe it was Oswego that they were looking at driving to and from on a daily basis from practice, which is both expense and an extraordinary ask of time from our students who have so many other obligations.
I'm not looking to blame anybody, I just knew it was a long
Yeah, I mean,
way away.
but I guess when we say it was a choice, I mean, you could give them a choice in Pennsylvania too, but they're probably not going to opt for that as a legitimate choice. So and the looking forward piece of it, while we have Nottingham's ear and willingness, that is a pool that for that 2-hour window that they have in the evenings, it's 7 to 9 p.m. now, which is obviously not as ideal for some of our younger students, but it is also a pool that modified and varsity could leverage at the same time in the same window at the same facility. And so whatever work can be done to lock that up for future years while those blocks are open is obviously an important scenario to explore in depth.
And I wholeheartedly agree, I believe those are the conversations taking place right now.
Any additional questions for that first report? If not, we'll move on to Dr. Tice's mental health services report.
For the second and shorter report regarding mental health, research and marketing strategies, representatives from RMS met with school officials to plan the autumn administrations of the faculty staff survey as well as the follow-up student survey. Each survey would be similar to the school climate survey that was administered in the spring, and we're looking at November administrations. Safety and security is reported in the media. The Onondaga County is partnering with an agency to provide school safety and security training in the Salem-Kaiser Cascade model. The behavioral and threat assessment training is expected to take place at the On Center in early December. That concludes my mental health report.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Tice on his mental health report? Okay. So next on the agenda, just looking at time and thinking of the matters that we have before us, we have committee or representative updates. So I'll just ask if there's any committee chair who wants to give a report at this time. All the minutes and information is in board docs, but perhaps there's something a committee chair wants to speak to. So anyone? Okay. So then I will move on to public comment. I believe we have 3 individuals for public comment. Heim?
Thank you. Before I begin tonight, I'd like to recognize Michael Balanoff, who's here with us. Michael is the president and CEO of the Syracuse Jewish Federation. I'm here this evening to address the factually inaccurate statements issued by Dr. Tice last Friday regarding the war in Israel, which he stated that there was terrorism in Gaza and in Israel. The only terrorism that occurred, and let me be clear, was perpetrated by Hamas in Israel on October 7th. Hamas systematically massacred at least 1,400 Jews. Hamas terrorists raped countless women, beheaded babies, and kidnapped in excess of what Hamas is now claiming to be in excess of 250 innocent people. This was not an attack on a military installment, but an attack on civilians because they were Jewish. Period. End of discussion. As an aside, I spent almost an hour on the telephone yesterday speaking with my great uncle and my great aunt in Israel, both Holocaust survivors, listening to them cry and tell me how afraid they are of another Holocaust. At the same time, my heart absolutely breaks for the innocent Palestinians who have died and for those who continue to suffer because of Hamas. I'm not here this evening to discuss Middle East politics. I'm here to discuss the need for you, Dr. Tice, to immediately issue an apology to the FM community for your October 13th email. Several members of the community, myself included, immediately emailed Dr. Tice on Friday to express our collective displeasure with your email. I did not receive a response from Dr. Tice until 2:29 this afternoon. Dr. Tice's email to me this afternoon indicated, as it did to others, that, quote, he would like to apologize for any confusion, end quote, last Friday's message caused. Dr. Tice, while I do appreciate your email, please do not get me wrong. Your email was not even a bit confusing. It was just factually inaccurate, which is why you need to apologize to the entire FM community immediately. I'm going to assume, Dr. Tice, that your email statement was not vetted by the school board. If it was, I am absolutely confident that it would never have been sent as is, but it was. Rather than apologizing for what I believe was absolutely an innocent mistake by you, Dr. Tice, a mistake in drafting, a revised statement was simply posted to the FM website without further notice to the community. I only became aware of the revised statement after a friend of mine made me aware of it. While I appreciate the revision, the damage had already been done. The proverbial horse was out of the barn. And your email, unfortunately, only compounded the horror and the despair that I was feeling. And again, I know it was not intentional, but the damage was done. Perhaps, Dr. Tice, we can use last Friday's email communication as a learning opportunity. It's okay to make mistakes. I make them every day. I probably made 50 of them today. But not owning your mistake and not apologizing for it is just wrong. Last Friday, the superintendent of West Genesee School District issued a statement to his community about the war in Israel. I have not seen it, I don't know what it says, and I'm not going to guess. But I do know it obviously hit a sour note because he issued an apology later that afternoon, and it is on the West Genesee School District website. Dr. Tice, you are a respected educator. You are charged and tasked with overseeing the education of every single student in this school district. I respectfully ask that you immediately apologize to the community and teach the students the importance of asking for forgiveness when a mistake is made. Thank you.
Thank you. Nope. Okay. Next, we have, I'm not sure the pronunciation of the last name, Brian. Is Brian here? Sorry, when I mispronounce your last name. How do you say that? Wiederman. Thank you.
Evening. Yeah, that's fine. Perfectly fine. Thank you. Evening. Familiar faces, how are you? It seems like a lot of what I was here to ask questions about has thankfully been discussed here so far. And according to Ms. Mims, to be getting questions sent to you or to the members to be able to bring that to the attention more of the FM community. I would like to say thank you, A, for allowing me to speak. Thank you very much for getting the facility of Nottingham Pool, and thanks for the Syracuse City School District for doing that. And being able to do that on such a short time. I'm not going to be critical. It's kind of one of those questions, what took so long? Because we knew Cazenovia College was going down the tank for a long time. I'm most appreciative because I know that we talk about the men and the women who are on this incredible team. They are so successful in what they do. They represent FM to the utmost quality. They have the highest GPA, cumulative GPA of any of the teams. And they seem to consistently be behind the 8 ball in trying to get a place to not only practice, but also to compete. The Nottingham school was perfect because my daughter is on the swim team. She's a sophomore at FM High School. It was good to see some familiar faces here tonight. I didn't get a chance to say hello. We've had the pleasure and privilege of being in the school district for 14 years, and it was really good to see them. And my kids have just thrived and loved every minute of it. And to that end, my daughter was asked if she wanted to be part of the dive team. And she said, sure, it's a new thing. She'll bungee jump, if you just ask her. And what was difficult, aside from the pictures that were out at the local country club where they were swimming, was the fact that there's no place for the dive team to dive there. It's too shallow. So when they did have practice there, the women on the dive team, and I would imagine for the young men as well, they just had dry land time. And I do know some of these men and women who are on the team also participate in gymnastics. So there's just nothing that they could do to try to recreate the environment of diving, which is part of the team. So thank you for getting Nottingham, because they do have a diving facility in that. And I think that possibly as we go forward, maybe that's something to also be considered for the team. And also not just to use it for just the FM swim team, men and women, but also including the entire community in something like that, because I think it'd be so beneficial. Thank you for the 180 seconds. It's been a real pleasure. Interesting. And thank you for
Brian, could you make sure you email me or us so we have your email address so that I can make sure you're included in the correspondence? You didn't ask any specific questions, but you have come to speak to the board and put information out, so I want to make sure we get information to you. All right, thank you. Yep. Mm-hmm. Is Christopher here? I think it's Isles? Yes.
So we're beating this swimming thing to nauseum, but I'm going to add to it a little bit. And I just wanted to speak to the fact that I've had 2 daughters on the swim team over the past 7 years. They've had amazing coaching. We should be very fortunate to know that we have Tim Gallivan and Josh Smith as coaches. They've elevated and grown this program. When such a demanding sport can be so hard on people, it's actually now fun. They've been amazing champions of Class A section over the 7 times over the past 7 years, or 10 years, I'm sorry. Yet they don't have a home, and they continue to exhibit pride, which is our motto. They're scrambling to try and keep their swim season alive, and they're yet undefeated and going about it with smiling faces. I don't think if our football team, our lacrosse team, or our soccer teams were faced with this, that our school, our community would tolerate it. If you look to the north or west of Syracuse, multiple schools are installing or updating their pools. Swimming is a life skill. It's shown to improve a person's mood. And simply put, it should be a basic foundation of the FM curriculum. I think we've talked about this, but the FM swimming and diving teams request and deserve equality with the rest of their sports teams. I don't know how many more times, with how many amazing things the school has to offer, I have to address with my daughters when they come home of what else do we have to do to get what we need? Why are we lacking this when brand new library and these other structures are being put into place? And I think I just want to end with an example of the coaching that's going on. We're talking about a lot of different challenges of kids nowadays. Tim Gallivan, my youngest daughter, has a medical condition that I won't get into, but he was kind enough to offer her an opportunity to be the manager of the team this year, just to simply be a part of something. And so to listen to the possibility of taking away a program, I don't think that should ever be a discussion point. I appreciate the fact of what everyone's done to make Nottingham a reality. We need to do something to put in a pool and make that a foundation of our curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you, and can you also make sure that we have your email address, Christopher? Okay. Next, moving on, excuse me, item 4.01, approval of the minutes from the special board meeting held on September 5th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Thank you, Sarah. Second from Chrissy. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? One abstention from Jason and Dan. Okay. Oops, lost my place. I hate when that happens. Item 4.02, approval of the minutes from the September 11th, 23 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the September 11th meeting minutes? Thank you, Jason, and a second from Cindy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Next, item 4.03, a motion to approve the minutes of the October 2nd, 2023 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Daryl, and a second from Chrissy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention from Dan. Next, item 4.04, annual policy review. Is there a motion that it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District has completed their annual policy review? Is there a motion? Thank you, Cindy. In a second, please. Sarah, any discussion? All those in favor indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. All right, item 4.05, budget year calendar. Is there a motion that it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District hereby approves the calendar for the 2024-25 budget year as presented? Is there a motion? Thank you, Daryl, and a second from Cindy. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So Craig and/or Brad, on the calendar, just so I understand, March 25th, we'll have all the pieces of the budget presented to the board, and then we're asking the board on April 15th to approve it, to put before the voters. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I understand the timing in the calendar. Yeah, that's it. I'm just want to make sure that we're not looking at it and approving it on the same night. So, okay, there's the 3 weeks. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any further questions? All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? No. Okay. Next, item 4.06, approval of agreement with Schmidt Leadership Group. Is there a motion that it be resolved that the Board of Education of the Fayetteville-Manlius Central School District authorizes the superintendent to enter into an agreement with Schmidt Leadership LLC for the purpose of a special education audit at a cost of $31,200? Is there a motion? Thank you, Cindy, and a second from Daryl. Discussion.
So I was not sure exactly, what are we auditing? Just how our practices or our data?
So good evening. Thank you for considering this. This is something I'm excited about. Not too many people ask for an audit. I realize that. But this is a strength-based audit where they're going to look at, present it to the teachers in a strength-based way. But the team will be helping us to look at specific areas like continuum of programming, equity across school buildings, looking at some random IEPs without names of students who may have been identified through the CSE process and looking at it being equitable across district. They're also going to take a look at our RTI process that we are constantly refining and see how that pathway positively or negatively leads into special education services. So as you've heard over the last couple of years when I've done the June presentation, we are changing and growing the program. The students who are coming before us every year, the needs are increasing and changing, so this will allow us to get ahead. They will also help with forecasting budgeting and looking at our 1 and 2 year old student, or 1 and 2 year old kids receiving services who in a couple years will be sitting in our kindergarten seats. So, are there any other questions?
Amy, in the past, we've been able to avail ourselves of the audit review of BOCES. Is this more comprehensive, or is BOCES no longer doing it?
I haven't experienced one with BOCES. I learned about this at the NISCUS conference. I spoke to another local school district who's used it in the past and are looking to use it now. It's really a great way to make positive changes and grow off of what you currently have. So I don't know about the BOCES audit, but it's not something they have.
Syracuse doesn't use BOCES.
Right, and it hasn't come up since I've been here.
Craig, you recall that we had a BOCES audit, right?
We did. We called the cops on ourselves, if you recall, a few years
do you
ago.
consider the Schmidt one to be more comprehensive?
I think it'll help us, especially with going from the co-teach to the direct consultant teacher model. Yep.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please indicate aye. Aye. And no one's opposed or abstaining. Next on the agenda, board development. The NISBA Conference, National School Board Association Conference, is in April 6th through 8th. Please let Sarah know if you would like to attend. There's a complimentary webinar from the comptroller on November 8th that you could register for. Working agenda items, we've had update on electric bus transition. Tax exemptions, that is a November 6th presentation. Let's see. Potential considerations for future meetings. Some of our usual suspects are here: restorative justice, future planning for UPK, excuse me, and the school start time bill.
Just
Or
to
perhaps school
do
start
some,
time.
sorry, just to do some cleanup on this, because it's been sitting
Mhm.
pretty stale. It sounds like school start time is not going to be a presentation this year. I mean, unless something changes, it sounds like no change will be made in 2024, so.
I
does
believe this
need-
is referring to the bill that's in Senate that's been parked in, right? I mean, we're hoping to get a decision sooner than later on the school start time, but this, I think, is referencing that Senate bill.
So what is the action item? What would the agenda item be, just to consider whether we want to support the bill or?
I thought this was more, so potential considerations for future meetings. So this is something where we've kept sort of a parking lot of things that we want to look at in the future without a specific time frame. But if the board wants to more look at it as more like things in the upcoming year and have the things that maybe have a longer outlook moved, we can do that as well. We can use this for more like the upcoming year, if you, or 2 years.
Yeah, there's just, some of these items have been sitting here for a couple of years. So, I mean, restorative justice is one that I know we've talked about, but maybe you could just refresh, Dr. Tice, is that something that there could potentially be a presentation on this year, or are we not there yet?
Well, I think as you heard in the building action plans, we could do an interim report, certainly.
And then I don't know about future planning for UPK. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but to me, I think it would be nice for these items to be within the academic year, and then then maybe we have a parking lot that is further down, but just so that it keeps our content fresh and we're thinking about it in a little more active way.
What is something we talked about today, as I look to Melissa, it's planning ahead for next year already. So there are different things that we are considering. I don't know if we're ready for a public discussion on it, but it is something that's constantly percolating.
So if it's an ongoing discussion, then we could perhaps keep it there. And restorative justice, that's something you're kind of looking at right now. So maybe the school start time bill, we not take off our radar, but take off this particular list, because it's not something that's going to likely come up in the next year or two. And maybe we look at this list as something with that lens of year or two out. Things that are actually on a table somewhere that people are working on in our district, not outside the district, because that's where the school start time piece is primarily right now. Thoughts?
Look, I would change the school start time part, I'd leave it as a parking spot, so it's always there, but just put a parentheses in there after of the year that we would be projecting to be discussing that in, right? Because we know we have to get through this building project first, but it's important. There's a lot of work been done. Who knows what changeover there's going to be on this board between now and then. I would just as soon it stay on there as a parking lot item so that it doesn't get lost off of there.
Okay, so we can then, instead of removing them, we could add particular dates. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. Sounds good. All right, dates.
It sounds like restorative justice is the one of the three that could potentially be reported on this year, from what I heard.
Possibly, yeah.
But as soon as we can add particular dates to those, I think we should. So that's a possibility right now, but I think as soon as we know for sure, we should put a date next to it. All right, speaking of dates to remember, 6.02. So we've got the electric bus open house at the bus garage on the 18th. Dessert concert on the 21st.
Marissa, sorry. So there's a morning presentation that you thought you wanted board members at, or? I just hadn't heard there was another one, so. That's.
Hi. There is a morning session. The morning session is really more of a school-based for like districts wide. So there was an invite that went out through BOCES and as well as myself, and we sent it out. It's probably about 26 different districts. I don't really think you need to be there for anything. It's going to kind of be a fairly redundant as far as like the data goes, but I would suggest probably that 6 o'clock session being the FM community would be the one that you'd want to be at. I wanted it both. I'm kidding. No, just the FM community one. The other one, it's really going to be a head mechanics meeting. It'll be the first session at 9 o'clock. Those guys are gonna stay after. There's other invites that went out to superintendents as well as my role. There may be board members from other districts that would come, because for them, it's not gonna be specifically FM stuff they're looking at. They're looking at more of like data to bring back to their own districts. So that's probably where the clarification was needed. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Brad.
But credit to Brad for taking the lead on this. We are the only district in the area.
Thank you. I
Hey,
won't go
Marissa,
through all of the oops, Dan?
I do have a question on one date that I was so wishing to see on here, but I don't see on here yet. Among our, we've talked about this before, Dr. Tice, among our COVID casualties was the district-wide orchestra concert, which used to just be an unbelievable evening. And is that happening this year? Is that starting again? Is it back on the radar?
They asked for the funding was appropriated, it got pushed out, but the funding's there to do it. It was a large venue like SRC, but we can check in on that. Huh? Yeah, it was on last year and then got pushed out, but I do think it's on for this year.
Oh, great. So we could just add it to our calendar if it's already out. Wonderful. All right, so I won't read it through all of these, but I got a question. STEM night at Enders Road, what is that? I haven't seen that one before. STEM night at Enders Road, do you know what that one is?
In terms of them doing, what's that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, just curious, because I haven't seen that one before. It looks interesting. Well, they all look. HSA? Is it like kids do activities, or is it like information? Oh, okay, sounds good. Okay. All right, so I'm moving on to consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Daryl, and second from Jason. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye, and no one's opposed or abstaining. All right, so now we're gonna make a motion to move into an exempt session with council, followed by executive session for the purpose of discussing two individuals' employment history. Is there a motion? Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you, Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate aye. Anyone opposed? No one's opposed or abstaining. All right, so we'll move into executive session, and then we won't have any public session after that. We'll adjourn immediately thereafter. So thank you very much.